was a little chillier, not not exactly what you'd expect for Florida, but we still persevered through it. So I guess before we go ahead and get started with the class, I just like I mentioned earlier, right before we started our I just want to read through the official statement from the Islamic Communication Forum, what's going on and why we're praying today. So all ISKCON temples and communities around the world are called upon to organize special prayers and kirtans this Sunday, December 1st, asking Lord Krsna to protect our devotees and all religious minorities in Bangladesh. The International ISKCON GBC Executive Committee under the chairmanship of Guru Prasad Swami and with the support of the Global Communications Ministry is calling upon all devotees and friends of ISKCON to join together this Sunday at ISKCON temples worldwide to offer prayers for fellow Vaishnavas and other minorities in Bangladesh. On Sunday, the day ISKCON temples host their largest congregational functions, devotees and temple leaders are asked to offer their Sunday kirtans and programs in a call for the well-being and protection of the devotees in Bangladesh. Temple communities are also asked to offer the following special prayer in spirit of global harmony. Dear Lord Krsna, dear Lord Chaitanya, kindly bless and protect all the devotees and other religious minorities in Bangladesh. May the current social tensions be peacefully resolved and may lasting harmony be established in the land of Bangladesh. Many are asking why or what they can do to help the devotees in Bangladesh, said Guru Prasad Swami, and we are asking the ISKCON devotees and friends to offer their heartfelt prayers, especially this Sunday and over in the next few weeks for the well-being of the ISKCON devotees and other minorities in Bangladesh. The ISKCON is a peaceful organization, and devotees of Bangladesh contribute in many ways to their country. So the Das, who's the head minister of ISKCON Communications. Unfortunately, some who don't know ISKCON well are misrepresenting us and our peaceful intentions. Earlier this week, the Bangladeshi High Council rejected the plea to ban ISKCON, which we are most grateful to the High Court for its decision to support ISKCON, said Das. So if you're looking to get more information or to express concerns, just make sure that you're doing it through proper ways. I know social media, especially now with how news is spread, can get quite toxic in some cases, so just make sure, like it's in the statement, we are a peaceful organization, and Srila Prabhupada said, the peace formula is the Mahamantra, is spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. Social activism comes and goes, it always changes, but the Mahamantra is something that doesn't change, and that's something that we can always put forward as an offering to Krishna. So we just want to make sure that we can put forward our hearts and our prayers towards the devotees in Bangladesh, so that way they can also continue to spread Mahaprabhu's mission in Bangladesh, which is so close to Mayapur. It's not far at all. So we want to make sure that everything is resolved peacefully, and hopefully very soon the devotees in Bangladesh will be able to continue their sadhana as they were. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead into today's class. That's good. But before, I know Dwight always likes to test everybody, make sure that we're keeping track of everything, all the other past topics. And I know he's probably watching, even though it's probably the wee old morning hours at 1 a.m. Time difference in India right now.
It's like 4.
Yeah, that's it. So
5 minutes to 4.
10 minutes to 4. 10 minutes to 4, yeah. So you should be awake by now, ready for Mangalarti and Vrindavan, but yeah. Well, I know he's probably tuning in right now, but does anybody remember what I was speaking on the last time?
Continuation to the Radhashtami.
Close. That was the second to last time. What do you like to do, Prabhu? What do you like to do?
Oh, yeah.
What do you like to do? For fun. What do you enjoy?
Oh, with my kids.
There you go.
Art making.
Being with your children. What do you like to do?
I was answering your other previous question. What did you talk about last time or speak about? You started with this question, what do you like to do? And whatever you like to do, convert that into devotion or praying Krishna in that form.
Yes. So, have you found any solutions yet?
Oh yeah, that day it helped me find how to turn my writing and fun or humor into something which is devotional. And you talked about, or you referred to Balarama, how he was humorous.
Good. Anyone else? Where's your part of Did you find anything that you like to do that you found a way to spiritualize it?
Other than devotional service, I like cricket a lot. I don't know how to spiritualize it yet. I know you like football and these things.
Well, if you think of it, at least trying to find nuggets. It's sometimes hard. Obviously, for something like cricket, it's like, well, okay, I'm pulling teeth a bit, but you can try to find Krishna in every single thing. So at least for the Indian national cricket team, someone's got to be named Mohan. Someone's probably going to be named Krishna, Arjun. So look at the national team, like, okay, at least someone has a name that I can sort of relate to Krishna. But even still, thinking about taking care of your physical body. Cricket is a sport. Physical exercise is important because you can't do your service if you've got knots and sore legs. You can't sweep the temple if you have a broken arm. So, taking care of your physical body is important. Making sure that you have good health in order to properly enact your sadhana is important. So, there are smaller ways to find it. Some things you have to get a little bit creative, but ultimately our goal is to make sure that every single thing we do has an aspect of bhakti in it. So if that is writing, which we've got success with, fantastic. Sports, you have to find ways, but a little cheat code is you just read Krishna book and try to find out what sports Krishna likes. Maybe somewhere in Shastra there's a pastime where Krishna is hitting a ball with a stick. But at least I know there's one where he's kicking a ball. So. But good. Anybody else have anything else that they enjoy to do? They found a way to make it Krishna conscious? Writing? There's one. Being the meeting of our family? There's one.
Yes. I mean, trying to keep my family engaged.
Yeah, I mean, you actually took your family up to the Festival of the Holy Name, so spiritual vacation. But that's something that, that's a very good way to spend together with family. If there's an event going on at another temple, make the road trip up to engage the entire family in that beautiful festival. So I think you found a really good way to do it. All right, so let's go ahead and get into today's class. Time I am. I'll keep it vague for now, but it will make sense once we actually dive into it. But I know that is a very famous phrase from Krishna. But as always, beforehand, a little bit of invocation. Om
Swayam Rupa Padamaya Dharati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudavadagamadam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saharadam Sadhayam Sadhurupam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Sahagana Bhavita Shri Vishakamatamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopikakanta Radha Kanta Namostute
So, let's talk about time. Good time. Time is a very interesting topic because it is something that only exists here. What do I mean by here?
Material.
Material world. Good. So, time can be considered in various different ways. You can look at the clock and watch the little minutes tick by, seconds into minutes, into hours, into months, into years, so on and so forth. And that we can see as the physical progression of time, but there are many other ways that time manifests itself in our lives in the material world. Feel your heartbeat. Your heart beats at a constant rate. It changes, but it still beats at a constant rate. That is time. You can look at yourself as you age. That is time physically manifesting itself on your own body, on the bodies of others. You look right now in terms of the seasons changing. We're actually getting a taste of what seasons are in Florida this year, but the movement from the dry season to the wet season, or further north, spring, summer, fall, winter. That is the progression of time. And time we interact with as well. What is time? Or specifically, who is time?
Krsna.
Krishna. Very good. Excellent. We know it from this verse. Would anybody like to? Oscar, would you like to take a crack at this one?
At the translation?
You don't need, if you want, yeah, you can just do the translate, or you're feeling
Okay,
up to it, you
fine.
can also do the Sanskrit.
Yeah.
Go with them, Mike. It's a very famous verse.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kalos in Loka Kesha Krit Pravidha Lokan Samahatum Aha Pravda Ritipi Vam Nova Visyan Yanti Sarve I Vastita Dat Ani An Isu Yoram. Would you like me to read the translation too? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Time I am, the great destroyer of the worlds, and I have come here to destroy all people, with the exception of you, the Pandavas. All the soldiers here on both sides will be slain." So,
Assuming everybody knows the context of what Krishna is saying, what's going on right now, yes? Yes. Is it what specifically is happening right now? So raising your hand if someone has the answer. Yes, Prabhu.
Krishna has just displayed the universal form in which he showed Arjuna all the soldiers on the battlefield rushing into the mouths of this great form and being destroyed. And Arjuna is just struck with wonder and fear. That, who are you? And this is his answer.
Yes. This is Arjuna is at this point. This is fine. Arjuna actually stumbles for words until he finally is able to croak out an answer. Who are you? And then Krishna gives this shloka, time I am. In the material world, Krishna manifests as time, which is fearsome, all-consuming, nothing can surpass insurmountable time. This verse is also even so powerful, even in terms of what it reflects. There's even a material scientist who is known to quote this verse. Does anybody know who it is? Oppenheimer. After he created the atomic bomb, after the first test, he quotes this verse by the sheer destructive power of what he just created. That is infinitesimal compared to what time can do to the material world. And good, Mataji, that you mentioned that this is indeed Bhagavad Gita part. This is all part of the larger Mahabharata story. And something else also ties into time in its relation to death. And it's actually in relation to a question that Yudhisthira Maharaj was asked. He was asked, what is the most wonderful thing? So if you ask the question to, let's say, if I just go to any ISKCON devotee and ask you, what's the most wonderful thing? Most of the time you're probably going to get one or two answers most likely. You're either going to get Srila Prabhupada, the most wonderful thing, or in this case, the most wonderful person, or the deities of Set Temple, which is honestly a pretty solid answer. Anyone can argue Srila Prabhupada's wonderful?
Yes.
We should all be nodding yes, yes, yes. Or Sri Tagore Nataraj, wonderful? Yes. Are there simply wonderfuls in the feast? Do we know? Yes. I'm not seeing any yeses. That's a worry. But this was Maharaj Yudhishthira's answer. The most wonderful thing is that death comes to everybody in this material world. And yet as time passes and it happens to everyone, everyone acts as if they're deathless. No one is preparing for death. They're living completely oblivious to the passage of time. And that is the illusion of Maya at work, blinding us from time, something that we're all familiar with, but for some reason when it comes to our own limited time, we're completely oblivious to it, we're ignorant to it. We have our heads stuck in the sand. I'm going to pass away at the ripe old age of 100. Should totally forget that I have to drive home in Florida. I-75 is choked up. There was what, 3-4 accidents alone on our way back down coming from Alatra to here. Death can come at any moment, at any time. When Yamaraj, death personified, gives us our prescribed number of breaths for each life, he doesn't tell us how many we are. He just assigns it to us, and it's up to us to live our lives in accordance with our prescribed duty, irregardless of how long we're going to live. So now my question for this overall topic that we're going to be talking about tonight is, how do you utilize Krishna? Because Krishna is time in the material world. And that's often, you can think of it in a couple of ways. Obviously, look at it in a material lens. How do people manage or mismanage their time? But also we're going to take a look at it in a spiritual lens. How can devotees manage, or in some cases, how do devotees mismanage their time? So, in order to tackle solving time mismanagement, we're going to first look at what are obstacles to us being spiritually efficient. How can we basically remove all those roadblocks so we can fast track our process in serving Guru and Krishna and ultimately getting back home back to Godhead? And in order to answer that question, we first have to understand what are those obstacles, and that is understanding laziness. Then we have to diagnose what type of laziness are we dealing with? Because there are different phases. Just like there are different phases of bhakti, there's also different phases of obstacles to your bhakti. So that involves a lot of self-reflection, looking at oneself and understanding where our shortcomings are. And understanding that sometimes it is okay to have shortcomings as long as you're first able to acknowledge them. And that means being honest with yourself. And we'll go into that in a little more detail. And then ultimately, how do you utilize your time? How one should utilize our time based on what we see in the Shastra, and those will be our suggestions for efficiency. So, let's dive right into it. Who can tell me what comes to mind when you think of the word lazy? Raise your hand, we'll pass around the mic.
Sleeps a lot.
Sleeps a lot. So are we talking about, are we hibernating like a bear? Like half the year we're sleeping? Are we talking about sleeping in? Are we sleeping 10 hours a day?
Sleeping too long, and then you wake up and then you're in bed for an hour. It's just general
Tamas.
couch potato.
Couch potato. Tamas. Mode of ignorance. Yes. Good. What else? Snowboard, you had your hand up. And then we'll go to Virginia Kumar. What else comes to mind when you think of laziness?
Not feeling to do anything, just sitting.
Just different. No motivation. Lack of that desire. Yeah, good. Virginia Kumar, we'll go.
My personal experience is procrastination.
Yeah.
It's the best form of laziness because you just don't do what needs to be done at that time.
Yeah, that's a very big one. Procrastination. It'll get done eventually. And eventually it goes on to the next day and the next day. And pretty soon, you realize you've wasted a lot of time. Due dates are there for a reason in the material world, whether it's for an assignment for school, whether it's a deadline for a project at work, whether it's, oh no, I need to make sure I have a cake ready for my child's birthday. There's always a due date for something, including spiritual life. We do have a due date at the end of our life. The only thing is we don't know when that due date is. So, we are in a very deep sleep in the material world. And there's one solution to wake up. Jeev Jago. So specifically, Jeev Jago, Goda Chandra Bhole, Kota Nidra Jhaumaya, Vishachirat Kole. Lord Gauranga is calling, wake up sleeping souls. Wake up sleeping souls. How long will you sleep in the lap of the witch called Maya? That's intense. Does anyone know who wrote this song, by the way? Close. A little further on in this line of descent. Very good. Apparently, that's what it said. I checked on KK, at least the updated version. Unless someone made a edit on the website.
In the song of the Triumph, it's written by Prema.
Yeah.
It says Bhakti Vinod Thakur KK songs.
Then why did I screenshot it and
It says Bhakti Vinod Thakur.
yeah, I was like, I knew it was Bhakti Vinod Thakur, but then I saw, anyway, I digress. But this is why we reference, but definitive answer, Bhakti Vinod Thakur. So,
According to KK songs, yes.
sometimes they update it weird, maybe, or maybe I was looking at a different song, never mind. That was a different class. Planning for multiple classes, sometimes they mix things up. So, we're all asleep on the lap of the witch called Maya. Now, what's interesting is Maya is both a good witch and a bad witch, if you want to have the pun towards the Wizard of Oz. Bad witch in the terms of when we're thinking about just materialistic life. But she can also be a good witch. Once you've actually woken up, gotten up, and actually acted, and began the process of bhakti with firm devotion, because then she will help you. Because then she realizes she has no power over you. But unless you're awake, she has complete control. So this first, once we've listened to Mahaprabhu and we've woken up, we now have to transition platforms. Because if you think about it, if you're sleeping on the lap of the witch called Maya, you're still on her lap, even though you're awake. You still have to get up off of her lap. Otherwise, she's just going to hold you. And what happens to a baby when he's being in the lap of his mother? Goes back to sleep. You can go back to sleep. Waking up is just the very first step. So you first have to wake up from the witch called Maya. So you wake up from material laziness. Then you're now awake on the witch of Maya. So you're now spiritually lazy. You're awake, but you're not up yet. So this is now getting up off of Maya's lap and actually acting. So this now goes to the idea of where are you progressing in your spiritual life in terms of how you manage your time. You now realize your position, but are you acting on it? Are you pushing yourself? Or are you being complacent? And this is something that sometimes is a stumbling block for devotees as they're trying to progress in their material life. It's that idea of like, are you a big fish in a small pond? Or are you a small fish in a very big pond? And there's different ways for it to grow. So if you're a small fish in a big pond, you have plenty of room to grow and expand and improve yourself, or in this case, progress to your bhakti. But if you're a big fish and you're living in a very small pond, sure, you may have that status, but that's then when you get entrapped by false ego. And that can be impediments to your service. I am the best pujari this side of the Mississippi River. No one is better. And here in Florida, I am the most artistic. No one else can match me. I could probably walk right into the Temple of Vedic Planetarium and immediately they would place me as the head pujari because of how intricate I design my outfits for the deities. Big fish mentality, small pond. Stumbling blocks. You can even get puffed up in your own service if you're not careful, if you're not with the right mindset. So it's always important that you're trying to stay on your toes, so that way you don't become complacent and you don't become settled in your role. A devotee should never be settled. You should always be eager and ready for whatever comes next, because as time passes, you never know what will happen. It's sort of the concept of when you're progressing, going from amateur to pro. So if you look at sports, for example, if you think about like a soccer league, you have an amateur league, soccer league, Sunday soccer league, they just play once a week for an hour, and then that's it. Maybe they might kick a ball in between the week, just for fun. And some of the players may have inherent skill that has come naturally to them. But if I throw them on the pitch with professional athletes who train every single day, drills, they set standards for themselves, they're going to be demolished, destroyed. So the same thing happens in everyday life. You have to always set yourself standards. Act as if you were a professional athlete, or in this case, you're a professional devotee. If a professional athlete can have high standards, then a devotee should also have high standards, because ultimately we're going something for that is much higher than a goal in the net. We are going for the ultimate goal, which is to return home back to Godhead, where we can serve Krishna eternally. So that means you need to have extremely high standards and cultivate those high standards. So what are some standards that Srila Prabhupada has given us to cultivate as devotees? Anyone have any that come to mind? Off the top, I can definitely think of 4 that are very regular. Wink, wink.
No meat eating.
So yeah, we'll get to that one. Yeah. So, Mataji?
No meat eating.
Yeah, so no meat eating. That's a very good standard. What else?
No gambling.
No gambling. What's another one of our standards?
No intoxication.
No intoxication. And the last one? No illicit sex. So those are 4 standards that are baseline foundation to set. Very simple, minor life changes. No matter, you can, even if someone who has a heavy carnivore diet asks you that's too major a change, it's minor. But those are 4 baselines that Srila Prabhupada has set as a standard. Then, once you've reached those 4 basic standards, our next standard? Chanting a minimum of 16 rounds. So you can always chant more, because as a devotee, a pure devotee of the Lord relishes chanting the holy name, addicted to chanting the holy name. So minimum of 16 rounds, following those 4 regulated principles. These are just basic baseline standards that devotees aspire to attain to get to that pure stage. In order to reach high standards, you have to put forth an endeavor. So, according to Merriam-Webster's definition, stealing this idea from who? Who likes to louder? Someone who's based in ISKCON Silicon Valley. Yes. If you ever watch his classes, he loves to dive into the dictionary so that people also understand. Because sometimes Srila Prabhupada also likes to use higher English, Old English, and sometimes he will pull various words that most people will only have seen that word maybe once for their SAT practice, and that's the last time they see it. So it's always good to constantly brush up on your English proficiency, because Srila Prabhupada had a very high standard of English as well. But simple one, endeavor. Merriam-Webster defines it as to attempt, quotation or parentheses, something such as fulfillment of an obligation by the exertion of effort, endeavors to finish the race. Or the older archaic version, to strive, to achieve, or to reach. So endeavor means you're goal-oriented. You're pushing towards something. And if we want to see what we can find and learn from endeavor from Shastra, we can go and dive right into the Bhagavad Gita. So, you want to read this verse for us?
Satatam कीर्तयन्तु माम यतन्तश्च दृढव्रतः नमस्यन्तश्च मां भक्त्या नित्ययुक्ता उपासते. Always chanting my glories, enduring with great determination, going down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion.
Endeavoring with great determination. So, when we push forward in our sadhana, in our bhakti, when we enact devotional service, that's the key phrase right there. Great determination. You're not going to turn pro if you train once a week. You're going to turn professional if you do it every single day. That applies if you're a doctor, constantly keeping up to date with your practice and all medical journals to know what is the recent medical science. That applies to an athlete to make sure your body's at peak physical condition. That applies to being a Vaishnava devotee of the Lord. Krishna will take in every bit of effort and endeavor that you give, but he will notice it more if it's outside of Sunday. Because it's one thing to, just do your bhakti one day a week from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. But that's 4 hours out of the entirety of the rest of the week. So managing your time and giving endeavor 24/7, 365 days a year, that's how you get great determination with endeavorment. But we can also learn more about endeavors in terms of material life versus spiritual life and how we utilize our time. Avi, do you want to read this one?
Prayasona kartavyo yata ayu vayaya param natatha vidhati shemam kunda charanam bhujam. Endeavors merely for sense gratification or material happiness through economic development are not to be performed, for they result only in the loss of time and energy with no actual profit. If one's endeavors are directed toward Krishna consciousness, one can surely attain the spiritual platform of self-realization. There is no such benefit from engaging oneself in economic development.
Okay, so without looking at Vedavis or grabbing a physical copy of the Bhagavatam, can anybody tell me what is the context of this verse being spoken? Or do they know who is speaking this verse?
Prahlad Maharaj?
Yes, this is Prahlad Maharaj. Specifically, he is actually speaking to his schoolmates in this verse. After being thrown into the Gurukul to learn economics, politics, warfare, trying to be the perfect son for Hiranyakashipu, he ends up preaching to his fellow classmates. Now, he goes on and he specifically lists this endeavor for sense gratification has no benefit whatsoever. Or specifically, to quote him directly, they result only in a loss of time and energy with no actual profit. How old are his classmates and how old is Prahlad Maharaj right now? 5. 5 years old, already has a full concept and reality of what eternal time does and how to manage one's time in the material world. Think about that for a second. What were you doing at 5 years old? Playing? I will be on. Yeah, I was outside with dirt on my feet, probably some in my mouth. And then Prahlad Maharaj, by the mercy of his guru, who is already fully self-realized and properly endeavoring and utilizing his service and time for Krishna. And he's imparting this on to his classmates. And he's really stressing this fact that why waste your time? Use it. Especially now that we are young and we have this energy to do so. Because with youth comes that enthusiasm and also comes the energy to really achieve something. Because gradually as time progresses, the body deteriorates. Things start to go wrong. Perfect example. Let's get ourselves a new car. Let's say we've got enough saved up, we can just skip all the leasing and down payment, we can just pay in full. We're gonna, let's say, slap down $30,000. Right now, this car is mine. Give me those keys. It's got 0 miles on it. It's brand new. Look at me, I have a brand new shiny car. $30,000. Right here, let's spice it up a little bit. This is a BMW, it's nicer, right, Oscar? We'll put this one, it's also, I think this is a newer electric model, so we'll put this at $50,000. A little nicer. As soon as you step into that car and you put your foot to the pedal and you drive off that line, is that car $50,000? No. Congratulations, you just probably lost like $3,000 just by putting your foot on the pedal. You've lost it. And you can, maintain it, keep it clean, put the energy into shine it, make sure that coat is nice and green and sparkly. You can take care of the engine, do oil change even more often than you should, just to make sure it's at pristine condition. You constantly change the tires. You don't even let them go into a even slightly warm situation. But time even affects the machine. And in 50 years, your brand new sparkly BMW is going to end in a junkyard. It happens to every single vehicle. Some can last longer than others. Some can last 50 years or more. But does anybody see a Model T still driving around the streets? No. Time will happen to everything. So, as Plavana Maharaj said, why waste your time putting so much effort? Now, to have it and utilize it is one thing. If you're utilizing it for a proper purpose, that's a different matter. So, for example, if I am, let's say, I'm going to take Gita Nagari as an example. I've got on the farm, I've got the oxen and the bulls that are working the fields, but I've got multiple urban center temples that need milk products to offer to their lordships. Well, I could get a little smart car, nice and fuel efficient, but it'll take multiple trips to give all these milk deliveries. Better yet, I've got a pickup truck that can haul hundreds of pounds of cheese and fresh milk to deliver to all the temples. Yeah, I'm going to put the money down because I'm going to use that vehicle in Krishna's service. So there's a difference between utilizing what you have, even if it's lower or better quality, versus having something for the sake of status. Because as Plavana Maharaj says, economic development gets you nowhere. You don't take anything with you at the time of death, just what you've accumulated inside with your creeper of bhakti. So this now brings us into how we are going to understand time from a devotional aspect. In terms of time management. Surprise, we are actually at a business seminar. But one thing specifically that I'd like to start off with in terms of how devotees should understand time comes from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and that is devotees should show concern that time should not be wasted. This is actually, my Guru Maharaj, Jayataka Maharaj, just recently gave a small talk on this, and this is actually the second out of 9 characteristics of traits for Bhava Bhakti. And this one specifically is concerning time. A devotee sees time as something that is precious and that should not be wasted. Even an ounce of time wasted is lost. You're misusing Krishna. So this is what we aspire to reach. It's okay if you're not at the level where you're seeing the minute hand tick away and you're like, oh no, the material world, everyone in the material world is not engaged in Krishna service. It's okay. But it's something to aspire to. So, first way we actually want to look into how we can manage and understand our time is we're going to analyze our japa. So, this one, for now, feel free to write it down or have a mental thing in your head, and then later on we'll go into discussion and kind of workshop it so that everyone, if you're comfortable, we can kind of hit this at the root. But how many rounds do you chant daily? So is that the prescribed 16 minimum? Emphasis on minimum. Is it another fixed amount? 8, 4, 2, even 1 round of japa? Or is it whatever time allows? I've got a busy work schedule, I'm always on the phone, constantly calling, teleworking. When I get some free time, I'll chant some japa then. But those are things to think about. Where is your japa at in terms of frequency and steadiness? And then, what time of day do you chant your japa? Is it the first thing in the morning, right after you get up? Right in the Brahma Muhurta? Or is it throughout the day? Do you segment your japa? 8 rounds in the morning, 4 here in the afternoon, 4 in the late afternoon? Or are you cramming it all in at the very end of the day? I woke up, I showered, I just had a quick little bit of breakfast, driving to work, go through my busy work day, come home, see the kids, take care of my family affairs. Oh, it's 8 o'clock. Let's chant my japa now. Chant, 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 chant. Okay, got them all done. Now I go to sleep. And then also the big question is, does your japa matter to you? That's the really big one that takes self-reflection when you're considering how you structure your japa through the day. Because we go back to endeavoring. If you think about how people act, we endeavor about things that we care about. We put forth that time and energy to make sure it gets done and it's taken care of. The perfect example is parents. Parents put forth that energy to make sure that their child has everything they needs. Yes? Yes, that's what I'd like to see. And sometimes it is an endeavor, and it's not always an easy endeavor, especially when we are our pre-talking, pre-walking age. That is a lot of time and energy you have to put in, but you're investing in the child to make sure that they grow up properly, and ideally, Krishna conscious. So, treat your japa the same way you would treat a child. If you care about your japa, you're going to make sure it gets done. It has the time and the respect that it needs, because it is a conversation with non-Prabhu. You're inviting the Lord into your mouth and going outgoing, because Krishna is his sound vibration. So we have to make sure that we're giving the proper care and attention it needs when you chant your japa. So that's one thing to focus on. Other things that you can consider, devotees always are engaged in service. So what does your service look like? How often do you perform your devotional service? So is it only when festivals happen? Only on Sundays? Are we a Sunday warrior? Whenever the opportunity arises. Every moment you're ready to serve. Whether that's a call, Tuesday afternoon, yep, I'm going to be there, or whatever need be. Guys, you can try to open up. Or, no, we're going to Kirtania, I don't do any service. So that's something to consider, like, how frequently do you do devotional service? Is it frequent at all? Does it follow at least a structure, or is it when it happens? And then also the other thing to consider is, what is your motivation behind devotional service? Is it for name and fame? Do you want to be known as the best Kachara in this side of the Mississippi? Or is it culturally expected of you? You know, like, my father was a Brahmin, his father was a Brahmin, therefore I'm a Brahmin. It's expected of me, I have to do this. My family's been doing this for generations. It's just how things are. Or are you doing it to please Guru and Krishna, which is ultimately what we want to aspire for and see, because that's how you know it is pure devotional service. And that will manifest in many different ways. So, for example, when going forth and doing service for Srila Prabhupada, think about all the things that the devotees did in the early days of ISKCON. Recording all of those lectures, classes, kirtans, everything, keeping a log, that was endeavor. And even thinking about what Srila Prabhupada did, let alone the sheer amount of time that he dedicated to write all of the Shastra, translated into English so that everybody could take advantage of it now in modern day. How many hours of sleep did he have?
1.5 hours.
About 2 hours. So close. Minimal sleep. Maximum service. And that takes a toll on the body sometimes. But he did it to serve his Guru and Krishna, because he was endeavoring something. He was trying to achieve something higher than anything that would be personally significant to family or name and fame. But because Krishna is so merciful, because his pure devotee was endeavoring to do this for him, Srila Prabhupada got name and fame anyway. But not because he was seeking it out. Name and fame came because his intentions were pure. And that pureness rose to the top, just like when you boil milk, that good sweet cream comes right to the top, and it's there to enjoy. And time manifests itself in many different places, and other ways as well, outside of just japa and standard services like pujari work and, let's say, cooking, but also think about many different ways. Time. Even like when you're doing kirtan itself, the Yuga Dharma, time is there. Quite literally, music does not exist without time, constantly going. So, focusing on every aspect of what you do. Locking in, just making sure your mind is fixed inside the kirtan. You're listening to the syllables. You're listening and singing along with all the other devotees. So you give a combined congregational effort. And it's not just multiple different voices all separate. In regards to this topic, I like to, in terms of focusing on kirtan and the time and how to follow along, this is a very beautiful quote from Sripad Ayendra Prabhu. Some devotees complain about the complexity of my style. But I think that if you actually listen to the vast majority of my kirtan, it's quite simple if one just pays attention. One thing I try to do is keep people on their toes. Forcing devotees who participate with me in kirtan to tune in and listen more attentively, instead of just putting their mind on automatic. Yes, it is a mantra. It is something that we're using to train the mind. But training the mind and being in, even like you say, like a trance, doesn't mean you're, like it's said here, it's not automatic. It's not robotic. You're not zoning in and just, your mind is focused on the Maha Mantra. You're focusing on the symbols and the meaning behind it, which is, you want to say the meaning behind the Maha Mantra for me?
Our energy of the Lord, please engage me in your loving devotional service.
That is what your mind should be focused on when you're singing in kirtan. And you need to pay attention, as he says. And even in simpler, obviously Sripad Ayendra Prabhu had many different beautiful melodies that he sang for the pleasure of their lordships. Some are more complex than others, but even in simple melodies, there is complexity. So for example, on one of the first recordings Srila Prabhupada sang in studio, when you're hearing the standard Hare Krishna, the very classic melody that he brought first to the West, if you listen very carefully, he does minor inflections to that simple melody. The devotees responding to sing the same response over and over again. But Srila Prabhupada is doing minor tweaks, kind of like you're decorating, let's say an altar, and you're putting flowers. You're just like putting a little flower here, a little flower there, doing minor small embellishments. So there's even beauty and complexity in something that is super simple. So that's why it's very important when you're participating in kirtan, when you're chanting your japa, you're listening to every minute detail. Because that's where Krishna is. Krishna is in the details. Krishna is in the Maha Mantra. You're listening for and to Krishna. So, this is where we now go into the last part of the class, which is going to be a little more of a workshop, but to just do a little bit of a closing out for my end of the talking. Time, just keep in mind, time is progression. And that you don't have to be worried about measuring yourself by results. Like, I need to make sure I am chanting 16 rounds by this date. I need to be initiated by this date. I need to be this date by this date. Everybody has different dates and due dates. And there's that classic quote, it's about the journey, not the destination. You will get back to Godhead, but that's only if you're focused on the here and now. You're enacting your service, you're chanting. You're utilizing your time properly. And then ultimately a devotee is happy anywhere they can engage in service. So there's that, a devotee will be happy if they go down to hell, as long as they can be serving the Guru. And then also it's important to understand where you are in your spiritual progress. If you think about gardening, always bhakti is referred to as the bhakti lata, the creeper, the plant of bhakti. Do plants, when you put the seed in the ground, is it, you have a tree instantly? No. It starts, first it pops out, you have the two little cotyledons, the two little baby leaves. Those baby leaves actually fade away. And then the stem grows out, and then the actual plant begins to bloom and start to slowly grow over time. So you have to understand where you are in your growing process. If I told you, brand new to Krishna consciousness, you said, I'd like to try this out. Perfect. Let's have you chanting 64 rounds a day. I want you to wake up at 3 a.m. every single day. Oh, you're on a carnivore diet? Nope, you are a strict lacto-vegetarian. You might see some results. Some people might be able to make that adjustment and work, but it's not always going to work. Easing someone into a change is often a lot more efficient than just instantaneous gradual change. Not to say that change should happen. Change should always happen, but understanding what is needed for the right time. For example, even let's say if I'm going to Latin America and I've got a bag of books and I go out, I'm ready to distribute the entire bag by the end of the day and order my next shipment, I go out to the street and I go to start talking to people, and as soon as I reach out to hand my book and I look at the book and then I look at the person speaking to me, and I see that the book is in English and it's not the Spanish version. It's not really going to be as efficient as if I was, let me change this for a Spanish Bhagavad Gita. Then I can be more efficient and help this person progress a lot faster. Otherwise, that person's going to have to first get an English dictionary, learn English, then learn the Bhagavad Gita. So it's always important to, when we're going and sharing bhakti, making sure that we're making it accessible for people to learn and cultivate. You want to make sure as many seeds are planted, are sprouting as possible, as opposed to mass throwing and just flinging seeds to the wind and hoping some pop up. Obviously they will pop up because Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada's books are ticking time bombs. Someone is going to take that book up and it's going to be impactful. But devotees are concerned about time, and they're concerned about everybody. Everybody's in this material world going through the same thing that we are. Just people are at different stages of their spiritual life. So it's important to understand, okay, this person is receptive, but I want to make sure I nourish that, fertilize that bhakti lata, so it can continue to grow. Because if I give it too much water, it's going to wilt and die. Or if I don't give it enough water, if I'm just not pushing them, I'm not giving them any standards to reach, it's also going to shrivel up and die. So it's also very important to know where people are at and adjust. So, Chief Jago, let's now turn this into our workshop part. So, would anybody like to raise your hand and share something that you've, at least in terms of what we've gone over in class, that they're struggling with in time, or not necessarily struggling with, but something that they found is a helpful way to manage their time in regards to something in their devotional life, whether that's japa, service, reading, so on and so forth. Or if anyone also has any questions. Yes, Oscar.
I'm going to try my best to close this one.
Go for it. Take your time.
Okay, how do we find the balance between being patient with oneself and not like having the quality that you wish to have within your spiritual practice, while also understanding, like you mentioned earlier, that we can die at any moment. So that when you kind of realize that you can die at any moment, you really sit with that. Yeah, I feel like that puts a little bit more urgency in like your spiritual life.
Yes. So this, I'll go back towards 9:14, where we're talking about that endeavoring with great determination. And then I'll go back also, since I know you're a soccer player like I am, so we can tie into amateur versus pro. Putting forth that energy, and at least Krishna will take note. Okay, they may not be at Bhav Bhakti stage yet. Pure devotion is just flowing from them. They're not at that stage yet, but they're putting a valiant effort in that is outside of just, yep, I'm chanting japa on Sunday. That is something to aspire for. So gradual steps, putting forth that energy, because even if you think about, let's say, a parent or an athlete, you're watching let's say your kid start soccer when they're like 4 years old. They're stumbling, but you're still pushing them. And you know, like stumbling blocks can happen. Maybe they hurt their wrist, they break their leg, but they still get back up and they heal and they continue to push themselves. And then as you watch your kid improve, they can start to dribble, they can now start to shoot. Okay, let's put you in a better league, and you kind of gradually move yourself up the line until you can be at a professional level. Same thing when you're thinking about a devotional life. Okay, I know I may not be able to chant 16 rounds yet, but at least I'm going to definitively line in the sand. I'm chanting these 4 or these 8 rounds without fail. At least having standards that you are meeting. That is that endeavor that you can see. Krishna takes note. And then of course, unlike Judeo-Christian belief, you don't just have one life and it's done. Krishna takes note of that. Everything's stored in your spiritual bank account. You may not have made it there, but you made it pretty close. So instead of sending you right down at the bottom where you have to relearn Krishna consciousness completely on your own again, I'm going to put you in a situation where you're already immersed in it. You're going to be basically on your way back to Godhead in the very next life. So that's the other thing to come to grasp with you. Sometimes failure is okay, as long as you learn from it. And Krishna is always willing to let you learn from your mistakes over and over again, because that's his compassion. As long as we're properly utilizing that time and we're putting forth at least an honest effort throughout our lives, and not just on one particular aspect. So it's something that you can just take your time with. But also, if as long as you have that mentality that, you know, like, I know I have limited time in this life, and you put an honest effort in, that's all there really is to it. Any others, or anything they're struggling with, or anything that they do that really helps them manage their time? Yes, Mirashtu.
Question to, that Hare Krishna, to the common question that comes, quality versus quantity.
Yeah.
Right, if you can, provide some guidance on that, that would be helpful.
Sure. So, let's say, well, most of us were up in Alatra for the Festival of Holy Name. Thousands of people, a devotee community of 2,000 up there, and then of course everyone who's also coming in from out of town. So you probably had 3,000 to 4,000 people cycling through that festival over the 2-day, 3-day period. That's a lot of prasadam. Do you think we are going to just, okay, I have to have 3,000 plates of prasadam every single day. Just get that rice, as soon as it's done cooking, get it on a plate, just throw in some salt, move it out, here's your plate, machine, make it fast, or are you still going to put that time and effort in? Both matter. It's not one or the other. Quality and quantity. Obviously, quality has more to offer, and therefore is more important, but that shouldn't take away the quantity either. I want to make sure I'm providing good prasadam for everybody at the festival, but I also want to make sure that I have enough. It's not saying I'm going to make sure that the salt is perfectly balanced, the spice level is just right. I'm going to make sure that each plate has at least 500 grains of rice. Counted. That meticulous detail may be nice for the 1 to 2 people who get it, but then you have a bunch of other devotees who are just sitting, waiting, not getting what they need. So you have to make sure that you balance both. So quality and quantity matter. And that also then applies in other ways. So for example, for japa, Srila Prabhupada set us a minimum standard of 16 rounds. 2 hours of your day. 2.5 maybe. How many hours in a day?
24.
24. So, 24 hours, set aside 2 for japa. Is 2 out of 24 a big quantity? 1/12. Is that big? Is that a big fraction?
But just need a dedication.
Yeah, it's a very small, minute fraction. 1/12 of your day is not that much if you actually think about it. So, luckily, Srila Prabhupada was merciful to us in that way, because he's given us a very small frame of time to put forth quality. Obviously, if you just say 16 rounds in a vacuum, that may seem large, and it may seem like that's a big quantity, but when you actually look at it, big picture-wise, it's actually not. So always have a frame of reference to what you're doing and considering those factors. What does the quality necessitate? In this case, fixed focusing on the mantra, making sure you're listening to every syllable, making sure that you're asking the Lord to engage yourself in His service. But also you're making sure that you're getting that number done. Not just say, well, I got at least 4 really good rounds. I told my Guru Maharaj I would chant 16, but I wanted to make sure that I gave it really good attention. You still have to do it. Same thing like if you go to work and your boss says, I need this report done by the end of this week. End of this week comes. Wow, this is a really good introduction. Where's the rest of it? Well, I wanted to make sure it was all like quoted, referenced, and it was really nice introduction. The rest of the paper, it should be, I'm working on it right now, but I just want to cross-reference it, have everything in there. I told you by the end of the week. Deadlines matter too, because we're finite. So the time is, here we go with the quotes, time is of the essence. So you want to make sure both, not just one or the other.
Thank you.
And others. Yes, sir, please, Mike.
If I could give any. Is that?
Yeah, there you go.
If I could example from Prabhupada,
Please.
You never hear anyone describing Prabhupada as being in a hurry or rushing around to get something done. I think frequently we'll waste time, put things off, and then we're in a hurry to get it done. Now Prabhupada, I mean, it's not like he didn't have a sense of urgency. I mean, he had the greatest urgency to fulfill the mission of the spiritual master. But at every moment, just moment to moment, doing the best thing he could do to serve Krishna and his guru at that moment. And that, if we do that, that's all we can do. The result is up to Krishna.
Exactly. And even to think about that, was Srila Prabhupada an elderly man or young when he received his instruction from his Guru Maharaj to preach to the West?
Yeah.
Young. How old was he when he actually set foot in the United States?
72.
But as you were just saying, he took the time to make sure everything was right. Translating, making sure everything he had, the tools available to him so he could be efficient as possible. And lo and behold, I would say he was extremely efficient. I think Srila Prabhupada is the definition of efficiency.
Even we see, when he was surrounded by his disciples who were observing his day-to-day activities, I mean, he was just, every moment he was writing or answering correspondence or preaching or planning or just doing everything he could to push on the movement, moment to moment.
Yeah. So that's another thing in terms of if you're trying to tackle your own spiritual laziness. Everyone has it. I definitely have my moments, plural. But that's why we have Guru. Not just for instruction, but also as an example. This is something to look, to understand. This is how a devotee should act. This is how devotees should manage their time. We follow Guru's example. We follow in the footsteps. We don't imitate. Do we have any other questions or comments on how we manage our time in our school? Yes, Guru.
I have comment specific to the topic and the point you brought related to Prahlad Maharaj when he was 5 years old. Especially in India, like when we speak with our friends, they say like, in general, if we discuss about bhakti or devotional life, they say, yeah, I think we should start after 60 years of age. I mean, when we have enough money and bank balance, everything to survive and then start. But what Acharyas have said that we should look at Prahlad Maharaj. He was 5 years old, and we should remove 5 years from our current age, and that is how we are late doing devotional service.
Yeah. Devotional service should start as soon as you basically self-awareness. Like, oh, ideally we want to realize, if you can realize that you're young, I am a soul inside a human body, that's the gold standard, but even at least realizing, having that self-awareness, engaging in devotional service is the desired goal. But to the point mentioning, I'll wait till I'm retired. I don't have to worry about work anymore. I'll have money, so that's great. I can then start to cultivate my spiritual life. Like you just said, you're starting behind. It's 5. So if you're 60 years and then you finally decide, you're 55 years behind. Versus if you start cultivating your spiritual life when you're little, that doesn't go away. That just accumulates and accumulates and accumulates. So that by the time you're 60, instead of, okay, now I have to learn to love this body, who is Krishna, this is already second nature. Because you've already been immersed in it since childhood, so it just comes naturally. And that's also to go to say, not everyone is able to pull an ajamil. Last second. Narayan! Oh, thank God. No, that is just an example. Krishna's showing an example of the power of his name. That's not the standard. So no one should be living their life like, yep, just gonna take it easy, but right at the time of death, okay, Narayan, okay, I'm safe. Because in some cases you don't know what your last moment's gonna be. If it's on your bedside, you're fully conscious and you can chant and listen to kirtan, that's amazing, that's perfect. What if you're in a coma? What if you're in a car crash? What if a Florida driver comes at you and throws an alligator in your vehicle? You don't know. So that's why life and the material world, utilizing your time should be just for the preparation for the moment of death. Because whatever your consciousness is at the time of death, that's what you attain. So if you're training your entire life to be Krishna conscious, to serve Krishna, and have that desire to serve Guru and Krishna all the time, you're going to achieve the highest goal without fail. Just like a professional athlete, they are constantly training their body to be at peak physical condition so that at any moment you can drop them on the field, they're ready to perform. It's the same type of mentality a devotee should have at all times. Whether they're 5, 15, 50, 100, maybe even 150, who knows? I think the current world record is 126, non-shastrically. I know the shastra there's older, but that's different, also different yuga. But a devotee should always, at least their consciousness should always be fixed and ready to act in service at all times. Thank you. Do you have any others or anything that someone wrote down?
Yes, just with reference to the question he asked.
Yeah.
So as a devotee, like a kid, at what age should like kids start to engage in chanting at least maybe half a round or start with 1 round? Is there any reference from Srila Prabhupada or the acharyas specifically stated that they should start at this age? Or
Off the top of my head, at least from Srila Prabhupada, I don't know at least off the top of my head, but what I can at least we understand from Shastra. Prahlad was 5, Dhruva Maharaj was 4, and he was instructed in how to meditate on the Supreme. So, but the other thing, at least practically when you look at your child, because people have different learning levels too, and different cognitions. So first, I think it should be, can you have basic speech and understand the concept of time? Once they basically have that, I'd say that type of awareness, then you can also start to engage. In terms of rounds, I would say a little more mature, but at least devotional service and kirtan, that can be enacted as soon as your child can start clapping. So it really depends, I'd say it more depends on the developmental stage of the child, but yeah, kids like music. I had my little mridanga when I was 3. And I was like, I couldn't really play it well, but I had it. But that was something that my parents gave me, and I would just engage. I was enjoying it, I think it's just because it was fun to beat on the drum. But luckily, to the credit of my parents, that cultivated till much later in life where I can actually now use that desire to hit the drum and have fun as service. So once you start noticing cognizance in a child, you should already start to implant seeds of bhakti. Whether that's sitting in kirtan, playing instruments, and then if they're older, it's like 6 years old, basically able to write and read, start reading Krishna book. Start chanting at least a half round. And then also see what their patience level is, because let's say if I have a child with ADHD, maybe if they're 5 years old, it's not the best idea to start them off on rounds. First, try to utilize that energy in kirtan. And then as they mature, introduce them. Any others? Got about 5 more minutes before we've got to get ready for Arti. Or anything that someone wrote down. I know I didn't see if anyone knows what they'd like to share. Or something. Yes.
It's not really something that I wrote down, but
No?
I guess, so, kind of going back to that whole idea of like material laziness and like spiritual laziness.
Yeah.
And just like you find that oftentimes like whenever people are dealing with material laziness, it comes from like lack of motivation. Like you wake up, you oversleep, and then you like decide not to get out of bed that day, but you don't really have any motivation to get out of bed. You don't really see any importance into it. And so like kind of like translating that over to spirituality, like especially like coming from like not necessarily, like whenever you grow up in like spirituality, sometimes it is often kind of like ingrained to you this value system of like chanting, following Srila Prabhupada, following Guru, but so like but that's not necessarily always the case. Sometimes certain other value systems, just like family, like cultivating like the economic importance and cultivating like just relationships and stuff like that. Those are kind of things, that's kind of like your value system that's set in place. And so you don't really find, like sometimes it's kind of hard to find that, like you can sit here and get all this knowledge about like, okay, I'm spiritual, I'm part parcel of Krishna, I need to serve Krishna, I need to serve Guru. But how do you actually feel that motivation? Like you can wake up in Maya's lap, but how do you actually like feel that motivation and like that urgency, that importance of spiritual life to actually, like push yourself out of getting out of bed,
Yeah. So there's a couple ways this that can be answered. There can be like I would say another classic Bible bashing, or in this case Gita bashing. You're all suffering threefold misery, and like this is I could give it that way. And for some people, that intense, the understanding their situation and the severity, that shock, and sometimes be a motivation for some people. For others, it's different, and at least for me, the way I started to take it actually seriously, obviously when I was little, I grew up just being immersed in like spiritual life, but it's just like, I went to the temple for fun, I went to school like that, saw my devotee friends for fun, but the way I was able to really start to appreciate Krishna consciousness, by my own free will, not by like my mom or my dad saying, chant your rounds, read your Bhagavad Gita for the night. It comes, and this is from something that Ratattvija Swami taught from the boys' summer trip, which he would take every summer, and take these boys from 12 to 17, and travel around, engage them in spiritual life. He always said this one thing to us as his students, and he said, Krishna consciousness has to be fun. Because think about it, if I'm going to, you think about the way your week is structured. You work Monday to Friday. Maybe you like your work. Do you really love, like you're addicted to your work? Yes, I am ready to do my work. You wake up, that's usually not your motive. Like you're waking up like, I gotta wake up, go to work, earn my paycheck. Let's say it's now the weekend, but you have a really fun event. You're going to see a friend that you haven't seen in a long time. And they're saying, I'm going to be passing through the area, but I'm passing through in the early morning. It's like, okay, I'm up, I'm ready, I'm awake, I'm happy to go see my friend. You're motivated, but for a different purpose, because it's something that is going to make you feel good. That's what Krishna consciousness should be for a devotee. A devotee should be eager and happy to engage in these things, because it brings natural joy to them. I want to go to the temple at 4 p.m. because I know that's when kirtan starts. Program doesn't start at 5 p.m. or at 6:30 when the curtain's over. I want to be there because I enjoy this. It's what I want to be as a person. I want to better myself, and the way to do that is to do something fun. And that is come to ISKCON of Orlando to engage in a program. So finding little things that make you feel happy. Because motivation out of happiness will always be more powerful than motivation out of fear or out of need. All three will motivate. And it depends on where you're at personally, because I could give a different answer for different things, but ultimately that depends on what the person is, what they're carrying with them, what they're tied to. So for example, in the terms of family, yes, a lot of cultures have very strong family ties. I'm Latino. I've got a huge family, and I've got the familial obligation to know every single one of my cousins every time I go and I meet a new one, but I still put that respect and I honor those traditions. But I am not my family. I'm going to still see my family. And I guess for them, subconsciously, give them a little devotee association, since they look at, when they message me, it's like, are you coming over? They have to type out my name to search me. They're not saying, okay, Krsna, Prema. They're subconsciously, they're still getting a little bit of devotion, even though it's not, let's say, full on, let's chant some japa together, deal? What is that? But at least subtle ways, they're seeing Krishna. Even if they're even if they, someone asks, I saw your nephew the other day. He was going to that place, he goes to a Hare Krishna temple. They're not chanting Hare Krishna because they want to, but they just said because of association with you. So then you become a positive association. So if your family member sees, the Hare Krishnas, my daughter, my son, my nephew, my cousin, my fill in the blank, is one of them. Positive association, so then they look favorably. And then, because of association with a devotee in their next life, or maybe even ideally in their present life, they benefit. So you have to kind of think of ways, not necessarily to full-on preach, or like other relations, like family ties, but just know that as long as you're fixed and you're steady and you're utilizing your time properly, that will have a rippling effect on those around you, whether they're devotees or not.
Well, I guess if you want to share, like someone to share, like I guess something that I kind of wrote down, something that after like doing like self-reflection, I guess what you said, like finding that happiness, like something that motivates, because I feel like oftentimes, and it might just be the way that I kind of like came to it, and like this amount of like sometimes I just feel like I do more like the, for the principles, I do chanting and I do services more out of obligation, and like, oh, I have to, or like I feel guilt or shame if I don't do it, rather than like actually wanting to do it, you know?
Yes.
And that's something that I need to change.
And that's something that,
work on.
and that's progression of time, but acknowledging and understanding where you're at. So for example, like, I was born in a devotee family. That does not mean I'm a devotee. Obviously I was engaged from birth, but I still had to take that step and say, yes, I want to make this a part of my life by my own choice. Luckily I did that from after just being obligated. Yep, my parents expect me to do this, but ultimately when I got initiated, it's like, I want to do this because it's fun, I enjoy it, and this is a part of my life. And we go from there. Perfect. So, what we'll go ahead and do is we will take all the mats, put them over, please, and then we will go for arti. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.